first off, I want to thank the grace of heaven and the virtues of the masters, the mercy of the grand predecessors and predecessors for this opportunity to kind of explain or try to talk about this book, The Answers to Truth. I mean, these are basically a collection of kind of questions that people have had over the years. Well, I don't know how many years, but they've had, asking the holy teacher, try to...
Supposed to be 99 questions.
Altogether.
Yeah, altogether. This is...
Yeah,
Yeah, we have these.
Do we still have?
We have a few. We have a few copies of
There's
this.
so many.
We have a few
We
copies.
used to have a lot.
The thing is,
but it just-
the English is sometimes
It's not so great.
there's some
Well,
mistakes or there's
yeah.
some.
Usually they're not really
Yeah.
Harry
Anyway.
says the Chinese is better, but
Yeah.
Yeah, the Chinese is more detailed. much
Right.
more
Well,
detailed.
no, because the English actually has more.
Detail? Really?
It's just that, so it's added. I mean, it's their explanation, because they assume like some Chinese concepts, Chinese would know, but the Americans they don't know, so they have to
spend the whole
explain
background.
more. But those aren't the words of the holy teacher, though. So that's why there's a lot of other stuff added. Okay, so that's why. But anyways, all right. So this chapter here is talking about the unification of man and the cosmos, right? So the cosmos. I mean, I'm not just talking about the physical universe, right? The universe is what we can see, right? With the telescopes and all that. But the cosmos contains more than just that. Actually, what we can see is the third one. Okay, so but it's basically we start with what we call Li Tian, or basically you can say that that's Dharma Dhatu. Dharma Dhatu is the true reality of things. Okay, so that's the essence of void. You can say it's empty, but it's not empty. Okay, so there's something there. There's an essence there. Okay, from that. Right, then so that kind of contains then the Qi Tian, which is kind of like the spiritual realm. We typically say it's the spiritual realm. The spiritual realm, or you might say like where there are forms of energy. Okay, so whereas you can say like maybe in the Li Tian, you have pure energy there. Okay. And then in the Qi Tian, you have forms of energy. For example, heat, light, electricity. These are all forms of energy, right? And then, or spiritual energy, right? And then that's where we have the yin and yang, right? Whereas the Li Tian is kind of absolute. It's indescribable. It's hard to describe it, right? But it's oneness, unity. And then the Qi Tian, that's when we have the yin and yang, the duality. Okay, so everything, because the yin and yang, there are certain principles that it follows, right? There's changes, right? Yin and yang, and that's what the I Ching is, based on those principles of change. And so everything that's in the Qi Tian will be subject to change, beginning and end, right? So that's not even the material world. Okay, so the material world then comes from that, right? So from the yin and yang, the Qi Tian, then through its changes, then it develops the Shang Tian, which is the material world, physical world. Okay, so basically here, the Li Tian essence is like this whole black background, right? It has no boundary, has no boundary, and then within it, right? Then you create the Qi Tian with the yin and yang, right? You kind of say it's a spiritual aspect. That's part of it. The spiritual thing, like we talk about the different levels of heaven, right? The spiritual, the divas,
Right.
they're all in that Qi Tian.
Yeah.
Okay, they have form but no shape. I guess you can say, or
Some have no form.
yeah. I mean, at the higher levels, it's the formless realm.
There's the form.
Yeah.
realm. Whole bunch.
But it's kind of different levels of what do you say? I don't know, ethereal. I don't know what's. But anyways, so
the real.
no, ethereal is kind of like what's another word? Ephemeral. Well, a little bit kind of like ephemeral, but it's not like solid. Like everything we know is very solid, right? Well, we think it's solid, but.
It's not a fixed form or shape.
It's not.
It's like a vapor.
Yeah, you could say like
yeah.
vapor, like gas, that kind of
So it's
thing.
not, but it's not fixed.
Right. Yeah, you
Not
could say,
fixed.
yeah. I mean, but they yeah, okay,
No,
right.
because the form is not fixed.
but it's a
solid.
collection. It's like it holds together
Hard to
still.
describe.
Okay, so within the Qi Tian, this spiritual realm or whatever is that small dot, which is the material world. So actually, our universe, we think it's very big, right? So many galaxies, billions of galaxies, and we think it's like maybe it's 14 billion years old, so it's has a certain size, so to speak. But what about the space, the empty space that's
It's even
around
bigger.
it, right? The empty space, there's no limit to that space, right? It's just infinite, right? So that's the part of that. Well, we don't know how big that Qi Tian is, but it's contained within that space as well. And then Li Tian, of course, is just infinite, all right? So we think our universe is big, but compared to everything else, it's not, right? So kind of put things into a little bit of perspective. Right. So through the interactions of the yin yang and there's these five basic elements. I'm not talking about the elements. Well, you can say probably the fundamental elements that we know of, right? The quarks, things like that, atoms. Of course, they build up the material universe. But in the Chinese way, they talk about the five elements, right? Jing Wu Sui Huo Tu, right? The metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Okay. But anyways, through those interactions, they have certain ways that they interact with each other, and then they produce the material stuff, right? Or they can also affect our qi, like our temperament, right? That's disposition. That's in the qi aspect. Okay. But actually, okay, so through, so Einstein, being a genius that he is, right? Right? He discovered or realized that, E equals mc squared, right? Energy, which you can say that pure energy of the Li Tian, right, can be transmuted into matter or into other forms, okay? So it's interchangeable, right? So that's why everything that's within the Li Tian, so the Qi Tian and the material world, the Shang Tian, can change. And they can also go back to that pure energy, okay? So eventually, who knows how many kalpas, after, we don't know how long a kalpa is, or mahakalpa, but, it's billions, trillions of years, who knows? Everything will return back to that pure form, if you will, the energy. But then it comes right back, okay? So it's not like, or I don't know, maybe it's always, these things always exist, but anyways, right? I mean, they might be gone for an instant. It's just a cycle. It could be cyclic.
It's continuous.
Yeah, it's continuous.
And it's non-stop.
Right.
That's
So
the key.
that's there's no beginning, no end
Yeah,
to that
that's
cycle.
The key.
The
That's
cycle.
the key. Yeah.
That's the
So
thing.
it's endless.
Yeah,
It's
so-
a continuous chain.
So it always was like
Yeah.
this,
So
and it
that's
always
why-
will be.
That's why that's the notion of qi 跟造,
Yeah.
right? That's what Lao Tzu also said, right? In chapter 26. 道法自然. It's the same idea. That means there's always a continuous
Yeah,
cycle
right.
of beginning and end.
Right.
So because there's no beginning and end, that's what I meant. So that's why it's continuous.
Right.
You can't say, oh, this is the end, this is the beginning. There isn't. It's just an endless chain. It's hard to describe, hard to
Right.
imagine.
Yeah. So I mean, but then they say, well, okay, so we're gonna have all sentient beings return back to heaven, and what? If everyone becomes a Buddha, would this?
No, that's highly
That's impossible.
unlikely. That's highly unlikely. Because think of all the animals.
Well, that's true. There's always animals.
I mean, how long it's going to take them to become humans? Number one, and then amongst that human level, how long will all of them become Buddhas? It's infinite. It's probably infinite kalpas. Think of all the mosquitoes that we kill, flies, bugs, ants. They're sentient beings too. How long will these insects, for example, will become a human? Probably infinite kalpa, not infinite. I mean, see, all of us. See, that's why we have to really understand the true meaning of life, and why is life so human life
Yeah.
so precious, and why there's a meaning behind it. It's because at one point or another, in some, if since we're talking from human terms, some past, some way, past that could be Who knows? Maha help us. We were animals. No, think about it. Hey, you say, oh, that's impossible. I was never a animal. Well, let me ask you. Let me tell you. Buddha, in his Jataka tales, he mentioned he's been animal many times. So let me tell you. Let me ask you. You think you're better than a Buddha? You think you're better than Siddhartha? He was an animal many times in the past. So you think you're never an animal? That's delusion. You have to admit, at some point or another, at some point, we were animals before. We were long time ago. Doesn't matter. But the point is, we were. So then, took that long to become a human again. Okay. So now that you're human, we have the opportunity to become enlightened. You better grasp that chance, because if we don't, and God forbid we become an animal again, my God, how long is that going to take for you to? So right, the Buddha gave a story, right? Imagine you're a giant turtle, right, in the deep ocean. Every 100 years or whatever the story is, it comes up to the surface and poke its head above
To breathe.
the ocean, the ocean. And imagine that there is a piece of wood or something like with a hole in the middle. And imagine he says, being a human, or becoming being a human, being born as a human, it's like that turtle every 100 years comes up to the surface and poke its head, and it just so happened to poke its head through the wood through that circle. Whoa, my God! What are the odds of that? What are the odds? Pretty slim, right? Pretty slim. So that's why Buddha is saying, one of the biggest illusions or delusions, or you can say ignorance, is that we think, we have all the time in the world. Well, guess again. Guess again. Okay? So that's why, as a human being, now that you have this opportunity to hear the Tao, you better grasp it as if that's the most precious thing through all time and space. Okay? Because otherwise, if we don't, and we become an animal again, well, don't blame anybody. Okay? So that's why we have to really recognize that fact, that truth. Then that will motivate you to say, my God, I don't really have all the time in the world,
Right.
because God knows how long it's going to take if this opportunity passes by you. Right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could say that animals, well, humans are the highest. Whether it's maybe one way to look at it, you can say humans are a spiritual evolution from animals, or moral evolution from animals, right? But anyways, we're more evolved in that sense. Whether we're physically evolved from them, that's a different story. Okay, I don't want to get into that, because that can be up to debate. But at least spiritually, morally, yes, you can say we're higher level. Okay, but anyways, all right. So this is kind of the world view, if you will. All right. So where everything is contained within the Li Tian, and then the material world is also contained within the Qi Tian. All right. So that's the view. All right. So the material world does not exist outside of this. Right. All right. Now.
That's Star Trek.
Space, a final frontier.
All right.
You make this yourself? Is that your voice?
No, that's Captain Kirk. That's Captain Kirk.
That's-
I'm sorry. I had to put that in there. It's because basically,
He's going into the videos.
He's in the Star Trek movie.
no. Yeah, this is kind of a little bit of a sidetrack. I mean, talk about a little bit about the science and the view of our world. Okay, so we think that we're in the material world. Everything is solid, right? Right. I can't. My hand won't go through this, so it's very solid. But actually, what we think is solid is actually space, and mostly empty space.
Yeah, depends on what perspective.
Yeah,
what
yeah.
Scale,
So if
what
you
scale.
blow it up, right, blow up an atom. So like this,
Yeah, if you're a neutrino, it's all
the basic
space.
atom, right, hydrogen, we all know, right, has a proton and electron. Okay, so although these are electrons and protons are quantum objects, which means there's no definite size to these things. Okay, no, you can't really measure the size. All right, but they have a certain mass. Okay. Well, if we say that the proton, let's say, is, well, since it's so tiny, we can't even see it, but let's just say we expand it, right, to be like a foot, right, in size, we just say. If it's a foot in size, that electron, do you know how far away it is
Yeah.
from that proton?
It's like to the sun or something.
No. So it's about 10 miles.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so there's that much space in between the electron and the proton. Okay, that's just within the atom, okay? So, of course, when you have atoms that they're bound together as molecules and, into solid objects or even liquids or gases, gases will be further apart, but, they'll be next to each other. It's basically the distance is like 10 to the minus 20 meters. Okay, that's 1 angstrom.
Dang.
All right, so
Yeah.
but you blow it up and it's huge. So it's actually full of empty space. And we see and the reason why actually we feel that it's solid is because there is something called an electric field. Right? All of these have an electric field, and they repel each other. So when I'm not really touching this, the atoms are not coming into contact. It's the electric fields that are repelling each other and preventing that from happening. So that's kind of interesting. The view that everything is about space, right? So we talk about that Li Tian, it's all space. It's emptiness. Everything is contained within that. Now the emptiness also, but there are these fields within it, force fields, energy fields that are within that empty. So there's no such thing as a pure vacuum, right? In other words, because in a vacuum, there are still these quantum fluctuations that happen in there. Okay, so that's getting too much. But there are all these types of quantum fields that are in it. So there's no such thing as a pure empty vacuum. That's nothing there, all right? And so anyways, this is the idea that there is more than meets the eye, and also on a large scale, when we look at the universe, right, we see, well, we can kind of guess at the amount of mass that's in the universe based on the stars, galaxies, etc., planets. But because of what they see, right, the observation says that, well, the universe is expanding, and it seems to be expanding even faster, accelerating. And so there's this other thing called dark energy that's pushing things apart, right? And dark energy supposedly makes up about 85% of the universe. So there's more than that meets the eye, okay? So again, that, goes back to that, this, oops, sorry. Oh, well, you have to hear that again, all right. But anyways, all right.
Space,
So,
a final frontier.
all right. Okay. Well, Star Trek is kind of interesting, but anyways, this is actually the voyages of the planet Earth we're talking about, not the Starship Enterprise. All right. So anyways, okay, so this poem by William Blake, or this is the beginning of the poem, the first stanza of the Auguries of Innocence. Okay, so it says to see a world in a grain of sand, right? So if you take a grain of sand has probably 10 to the 22 of atoms of silicon. And so that is like a whole world in itself, right? So many atoms within that. But again, that world, because that essence that that essence of Tao, if you will, exists everywhere, even at the most micro scale, right? It's always there. It's all there. It's already there, and that can give rise to anything. So, and heaven and wildflower, right? Hold infinity in the palm of your hand. Yeah. So you can hold these things, and there's actually, well, there's not an infinite amount, but there's a huge number of atoms within this, okay? And then, not to tell, protons are made up of quarks, so 3 quarks. And so, who knows how many fundamental particles are in there, right? And eternity in an hour. Okay, so time is also another kind of thing that's kind of odd that, in this whole universe, it's actually everything is an illusion. So physicists now, they see that this reality seems to be like an illusion. It's not real, okay?
Hologram, they say, right?
It's like a hologram, yeah, that's one way to describe it.
N-dimensional hologram.
So that's why I always use the movie The Matrix, right? It's like The Matrix, it's a simulation, right? They all follow these certain rules, these laws of physics, and that we're just in that, okay? But everything ultimately is in the mind, from the mind, okay?
Well, in quantum mechanics, they say time is really an illusion too.
Yeah.
It's just like another dimension. It's like the three-dimensional space or whatever, actually just multi-dimensional, you know that? So in
Right.
quantum mechanics, whereas classical mechanics, we say, time
Yeah.
is fixed
Right.
because, right? Distance is equal to velocity times time, right? So that's a fixed. I mean, that's, right? Classical,
Okay.
Newtonian.
All right, so, but basically, yeah, even so Buddha says, from the Buddhist teachings, all phenomena and images are illusions. Okay, so they are all manifestations of the mind, right? So the mind, the essence of mind is that Tao, or that essence of Tao, okay? And everything is created from this continuum of karma that we keep creating, more karma. So everything comes together. So basically the existence, so why is it an illusion? Basically, this world that we see as it is right now, these conditions are the result of the mind and of karma. Okay, so everything is the way it's supposed to be. so there's no such thing as, it isn't supposed to be like this. Everything is the way it is because of all our karma and the manifestation of our mind, right? So there's Indra's net. Indra's net kind of talks about this. It's using kind of a metaphor, right, for this universe, everything within the universe, right? You have a net, right, and then you have the points where they connect, all the threads, the lines connect to each other, right? And then if there's like a jewel in each one, and then they reflect all the other ones within it. So that's, in science or science fiction, they talk about, multiverses, right? Multi-universes, parallel universes, right? But actually, it's basically all possibilities are there, right? What it's saying is that all possibilities are there. So it doesn't say that everything is happening, all possibilities happen at the same time, that, until I make until I make a choice, anything, all possibilities, anything is possible, right? Until I make that choice, right? So making that choice. So in science and physics, the same thing, right?
So they just
These quantum objects, these quantum particles, until you actually measure it and observe it and measure it, it's just a probability field, a wave function. Okay, so there's no definite say, it's here, and it's only when you measure it, only when you detect it. Okay, it's a definite. So it's in other words, you can say it kind of made a choice at that point. But until then, all possibilities exist, and so that's really for us. It's kind of seems kind of odd for us to think that way, but at the quantum level, that's true. And also, but it is true for us too. So that's what that Indra's net is talking about. And also the 12 links of dependent origination. It's really, that we say that's cause and effect. But cause and effect, when we talk about it, tends to be linear, right? I did something right now, and then something's going to happen later on. But actually, all possibilities exist at all times, right? So that's why it's all dependent, okay, origination. There's no independent origination, so there's no beginning to it. They're all interlinked. All our karmas are interlinked, right? So it's hard to disentangle ourselves from everything else, right? So everything is all connected. Okay, so that's kind of a little bit of background about that. But we're talking about the unification of man and cosmos. So man, for us to be reunified, later on we'll talk about, we actually are part of the whole cosmos, but to become reunified, because we're kind of lost, if you will, in this world, we kind of like forgot how to become unified, is Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, which is basically you can say nirvana, returning to that void, returning to becoming one with the cosmos, all right, Tathagata, becoming Buddha, okay? So those are different ways to say to be reunified with the whole cosmos, with the Tao, okay, with the essence of Tao. All right, so now the next topic is kind of like talk about humans and animals. Okay, so we were kind of mentioning that before, but different types of animals depending on the chi, right? Everything. This chi is you can't see it, but it has a great influence on life, on everything. Okay, and the chi follows the yin and yang, right? The where it starts, beginning, and then birth, development, and then decline. Okay, so according to this book, right, it says during the young yang, right, that's the beginning of the yang period, which is like the spring, right? That corresponds, and then it has these characteristics, if you will, that are properties, right? It corresponds to the east. It's springtime. It corresponds to the element of wood, and it also corresponds to the virtue of benevolence, right? So then that is the characteristic of the animals that are born that have fur, right? So most mammals, I guess, except for humans, right? They have the fur, and they are the ones. Most of them, this is not 100%, but most of them are herbivores. Okay, so that's why it's benevolence. Okay, so they don't kill, right? The second type of animal is during the old yang period, right? So yang is starting to has reached its peak. So that's like the summer, and because summer it's like fire, hot, right? They have propriety. Okay, so these are the feathered animals, so birds. Okay, so birds tend to have they follow certain principles, whether they have the flock, and then they fly in in some kind of order. There's some kind of ordering there, and so that's kind of the propriety. And then following that is the young. So yin is starting to come up. That's the autumn period, right? Just that's the shell animals. So like turtles, for example. I don't know if there are any other examples, but it's basically turtles. 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 Turtles are very special. Their breathing is very slow. They can regulate their breathing, right? So just like I said, those sea turtles, they can. I don't know how long they can go without taking a breath, but that's a long time. And so their life is actually very long. Okay, so our lifespan really is directly correlated to how fast we breathe, how fast our heart rate is, right? So mice, right, little animals, their heart rate, their breathing is very fast, and their lifespan is very short. Whereas turtles, their breathing is very slow, heart rate is slow, and so their lifespan, hundreds of years. Okay, so that makes sense. So for us as humans, if we want a longer lifespan, we need to control our breathing. And Holy Teacher, they taught us to do the reverse breathing, or I don't know what we're going to call that, reverse breathing method. But anyways, that's regulating the chi within our body. Okay, So and then the scale animals, right, is next. That's when yin is reaching its peak. That's in the winter. Okay, so water, right? That's the element of water. So these are basically the animals in the water. Okay, so fish, that type of thing, right? And humans, though, we're the naked animals, so to speak. We don't have fur or any kind of covering on our skin, smooth skin. We're in the center, so we're special. So we are different from the other animals. Being in the center means that we have the qualities or the virtues of all the others directions. Okay, so we're not like limited to one particular aspect or one particular property characteristics. We have all of them. That's why we're complete. Okay, so we're complete, and so that's a distinction between animals and humans. Animals also, okay, you look at it another way. Animals have the sun chi, which is the growth spirit of growth or growth energy. Now plants, they have that growth energy, right? They can grow, but that's it, right? They don't have awareness or thinking or kind of feeling. Animals also have the hun qi, which is that awareness, okay, that spirit of awareness. Now humans also have a ling qi, which is, you can say, that soul, okay? So there's a difference there, and that's why humans can become enlightened, become a Buddha, whereas animals cannot, at least not while they're animals, right? But they can, you you can say, yeah, the reincarnation, if they become a human, then they have that chance, because then they'll have a soul. Although this maybe raises a question, because we say, well, humans can be reincarnated as animals, so where's the soul? Does anyone have the answer to that? Because it says, animals, they don't have that ling qi. They don't have that soul.
No, that's why. See, that's why they say. That's why. That's part of the 14 unanswered questions. The soul is still an illusion. The soul is still.
Well, the
not,
soul is kind of
not
comes
our
about
nature.
from the qi.
That's right. That's
Comes
what
about
I
from the
said.
qi.
Yeah.
But okay,
Yeah.
yeah, actually, the soul. You can say that the soul for the person who's become an animal. What I've heard, one way to say it is that, yeah, the soul still exists, but it's in the underworld. Okay, or it's in a purgatory or somewhere that it's kind of like a holding area. But so while they're an animal, right, they don't have that soul, because the soul is what gives us more than just awareness, right? Ability to reason, to think, things like that. So the animals don't have that. So yeah, that's one way to say it. But anyway, so this is kind of from a spiritual energy aspect, that the difference between humans and animals. Now, okay, so getting back to that idea of how man and heaven are united, right? So we're basically a miniature cosmos, right? Because we have those three, the Li Qi Shang, okay? So, right, the Li Tian, the absolute, or the true essence, okay? And then the Qi, the spirit aspect, and then the physical body, okay? So these correspond to those three different realms, if you will, that we talked about at the very beginning. So that makes us a miniature, cosmos. So that's how we can return and become one with the cosmos, right? So animals cannot, right? Because they're not complete, okay? They don't have that Li, that true self, okay? All right, so Li and Qi is normally in balance, right? So again, that Qi, when it dominates, basically it affects our conduct, it affects our our character. Okay, so man starts pursuing materialistic satisfaction, including having emotions, desires, right? Actually, desires, to have desires, it kind of starts from having emotions first. Okay, so those two, right? They build up, and so depending on the qi, right? Because when we're born in, that's why astrology, right? They look at the various. Oh, you're born in this under this sign, this time, etc. Yeah, those are the various different, you could say, latitudes in that cosmology space affects the qi, our temperament and disposition. Okay, it does, and so depending on that, so we're going to be born with different characteristic. Okay, and so it's kind of like a handicap. We have to overcome that. So different people now. Why we have certain amounts, maybe it's because of a karma too. Okay, so that can determine, under what sign we're born, things like that. All right. So what we really want is that Li, that true self to dominate. Okay, so we want to follow the true self. So then man becomes, inspired to follow the saints and sages. Okay, and basically we develop the virtues and morality. Okay, so that's that path. So that's kind of two paths. The one path is, well, unfortunately, that first one, if we follow the material path and, desires, emotions, that could lead to becoming an animal. I mean, if we go too far. I mean, if we're kind of average, maybe that won't happen. But if we kind of go a little bit too far, then we become an animal. All right, so we devolve. But to become unified with heaven, if you will, we have to evolve. We have to, to elevate ourselves, okay, spiritually and morally. All right. Okay. Okay, achieving center and harmony. Okay, so this is, they have a thing from the Doctrine of the Mean, right? From feelings of sorrow, joy, delight, and anger are perceived but not displayed, it is called the center. When those feelings turn into emotions and are displayed with proper manners, it is called harmony. Right? Center is the natural property of all beings and events. Harmony is the common path all beings and events travel. By achieving the state of center and harmony, the universe is aligned and all things are nurtured. Right? Center, basically, this is like the essence and the manifestation, right? We follow our internal, well, if we following our Buddha nature, our true nature, our true self, we are aware of things that may cause, us to have some, sorrow or joy or delight or anger, right? But how we manifest that, how we show it, display it, right? That's very important. It's like, someone just did something that offended me, and I just blow up, right? So that's we're not controlling our emotion, and so basically the emotion or that chi is starting to control us, right? So the li, we have to always be in control, not let the emotions take over, and so that is what's called being, in harmony, all right? So basically, okay, so center is the essence of Tao or the true self. Harmony is the mystical and divine nature of Tao or the manifestation of true self, right? So basically, if we follow the center, follow the true self, everything that we do will be according to those virtues. And also, we would do it in a way that is, we don't create karma. Okay, so it's wu wei, the not the motiveless or intentionless type of action, right? And the ultimate goal of cultivation and practice, this is, basically achieving center and harmony is the ultimate goal of cultivation and the practice of Tao. Okay, so that is the way of saints, sages, and Buddhas. So being aligned with heaven, one achieves unity or oneness with the cosmos and therefore transcends the cycle. So that's the only way to transcend this constant cycle of reincarnation, all right? We have to kind of cut off the source of what causes us to be, constantly in this cycle. And basically, it's those emotions, those desires, right, that we have to keep under control. Okay, so this basically these are the basic things that we have, right, as part of our original true character or true nature, right? Basically, there's the four that we talked about, right? Benevolence, propriety, justice, wisdom, and the center. Okay, the center is the most important. Faith, or faith is really what does that mean? It's being true to oneself, right? Fidelity or sincerity or genuineness, right? So what is that? That's displaying. That is our true self, our true nature, all right? And so that is the center. And then to achieve harmony, right, we have to follow that center. So in displaying everything else, we follow that center. We follow this. We are true to ourselves. So and we are sincere and genuine. Okay. And so this is, Confucius talks about this. Buddha or Jesus. They're all talking about these various aspects or various ways of talking about this. Okay. All right, so in the document, if one awakens to the true self, one can help others awaken to their true selves. Then he can help all substances awaken to their essence. After that, he will be able to help heaven and earth, to cultivate the world and be in parallel with heaven and earth. Right? Isn't that the same as what a Buddha or what a Bodhisattva does? Right? So this is they're talking about the same thing. Okay, so finding that true self or the Buddha nature to awaken ourselves to that and try to awaken others to it, right? And so basically to get on that path of cultivation so that we can then become one ultimately, right? So this what's said in the Doctrine of the Mean is no different than what Buddha talked about. Okay. All right. Transcending birth and death, right? So we know we have to first. There are two conditions. Basically, we have to know the origin of our true self. Well, actually, you can say before that, we have to know that we have a true self, the true nature, right? A lot of people, they're atheists, they're existentialists or nihilists, right? They don't believe there's anything like that, right? So for them, it would be very difficult to transcend the cycle, right? Because their focus or what their belief is in all the material stuff and what they can see, what's tangible, okay? And we know that that's all an illusion, right? So we have to know that we have this true self, first of all, and then that the true self is, you can say, comes from or is part of that origin, that essence, that Tao, okay, that always existed, that Li Tian, right? Then we also have to realize that, well, we should return back to that we're here, yeah, we have a different form, we have a form in this world right now, in this life, but that form is temporary, and it's also an illusion. Eventually we have to give it up, and we should return. So we have to know how to get back to the origin, or become one with the origin, the essence, right? So basically, karma, or 666, right? You probably know that from, that's referred to in the Bible, right? 666. They don't explain it, but it's very interesting. That's if you break it down, it's the six sense objects, 6 sense organs, and 6 sense perceptions. Okay, so what they're saying is that this number of the beast, the devil, is actually us. It's our senses. All right, we create all those desires. That our karma and our ignorance is what prevents sentient beings from transcending this cycle. Right? Again, we're all caught up in this, all the material stuff and everything, and we don't see what's really true. Okay, the Ling Qi. So remember, our soul can become contaminated by all this pursuit of material things, our desires, our emotions, right? And it becomes diminished. That energy becomes diminished. So we have to have that Ling Qi to help us to evolve, if you will, to elevate ourselves spiritually. If it kind of becomes diminished, then yeah, so we become an animal, right? Okay, so that's kind of the basic idea for us to transcend. And then we have to have the proper views of things, right? The Four Noble Truths, right? The life is suffering, dukkha. Okay, so dukkha is caused by our own desires and emotions, right? We can eliminate those to end the dukkha and basically attain nirvana, or return to become one again with the essence. And we have to practice the path of cultivation. Okay, so today we can receive the Tao, and it can liberate us from that cycle, at least temporarily. Okay, so today even though we're not perfect, right? We're not like Buddhas. We haven't perfected our virtues, but because we received this Tao, that's why this Tao, receiving the Tao, is so precious. It allows us to transcend maybe for the remainder of this cycle that we're in. Okay, but the next cycle will probably, depending on how well we've cultivated. If we haven't cultivated well enough, we don't have enough merits and virtues, we're gonna have to come back and cultivate again in this world. Okay, but Buddhas, they've all been through that many times. Okay, over many kalpas, and so it's going to be no different for us, right? We kind of like to say, oh yeah, we can go to heaven and stay there, but the reality is that we really have to work at it. If we don't work out enough, then we're going to have to still come back later to cultivate. But hopefully we'll have at least a better foundation. Okay, so it's important that we build up that foundation in each of our lifetimes that we're here, right? Make the most of it, make the best of it, rather than going up and then going down, becoming an animal, and going back up and climbing our way back up. So hopefully we're always making progress, right? Okay, so then go on to the topic of the heart and mind, right, and the true self, right? So the true self, again, is the essence of life and the root of the cosmos. Okay, so that's really, that true self is not, it's not distinct from the essence of the whole cosmos. Okay, it's part of it. Okay, it's one with it already. Okay, the heart and mind, though, is the manifestation of that true self, right? So we all have the heart and mind. When we enter the post-heaven, which is entering the chi, the realm of chi and the material world, the true self then disperses, that's when the soul appears, okay? So that's when we have the soul, and then we have something called the Hun and the Po. The Hun is basically, it's kind of corresponds to the yang energy, and then the Po corresponds to the yin energy, okay? So the Po is really kind of like the lowest, which is kind of like, you can say our senses, right? Remember those 6 senses. And so it's all about desires and satisfying my senses. Okay, whereas the Hun is kind of a little bit high, it's higher level than that, so it can actually do good and bad. Okay, so actually we can talk about that in terms of the heart and mind, because it's the manifestation, right? So we're talking about the true nature, the human nature, and animal nature, right? The animal nature is like, if you look at an animal, they just know how to survive. They don't really know other things other than just to survive, okay? So it's mostly for the self. If they're hungry, they're going to eat. If they're cold, they're going to find shelter, things like that. Whereas humans, we can do more than that, right? The human nature, we can make choices that are beyond and maybe even go against what the conditions might dictate. Like for an animal, right? For an animal, they're going to seek shelter when it's pouring out. Whatever. A human, we might make a different choice. We might say, yeah, well, I enjoy the rain, or I enjoy the whatever, so the cold, and so we can make choice. Plus, we can always build tools. We have tools. We can create things, right? That help us. But the true nature is really that's our essence that we have. So, in terms of there's a little table here. So the humans embody the essence of all these three levels, right? The Li, Qi, Shang. Okay, so the essence, spiritual and material aspects, right? Basically. So the true nature, human nature, animal nature, right? In terms of psychology, you can say it's the super ego, the ego, and the id, right? The id is all about selfish desires, things like that, etc. The ego, of course, we can decide good. There's morality there, and we can decide to do good or not. The super ego, that's kind of like it's kind of like. The superego and the id is kind of like those two, like the angel and the little devil right inside. One is telling you to do good, the other one's telling you, yeah, no, just do things for yourself. And then the ego has to is in the middle and trying to decide which to follow. So hopefully, for us to become a saint or sage or Buddha, right? The ego, we have to follow the true nature, okay? The superego. Listen to the angel, right? And then, so that's kind of, so the spiritual and material natures are influenced by the Qi Tian, right? Like I said, because it's influenced by the Yin and Yang, the changes that happen within the Yin and Yang. If we're born with a heavy influence from the Qi, then we're dominated by the Qi Xing, and so basically that the Qi Xing and the Zi Xing, right? The human nature and the animal nature, right? And so we are more easily lost in emotions and pursuit of material things. If we're born with a light influence from the Qi, then maybe the Li Xing aspect will be more dominant. Then we can likely become a saint or sage. So again, if we have a lot of bad habits, temperament, that's why we have to correct those and get rid of those as much as we can. Do our best to do that, because otherwise those are the things that cause us to create karma and stay within the cycle of reincarnation. And that's why we have to get rid of those. Okay, so good and evil in humans, right? Depends on which of the Li Xing, Qi Xing, or Zhi Xing dominates, right? Li Xing is the pure, you can say it's that pure self, it has no evil, right? Qi Xing is yang, but it can be good or bad. And Zi Xing, of course, is the Ying aspect, and that's purely the emotion, the desires, the material stuff. It's mostly selfish. Okay, so what determines nature? Is it nature or nurture? That's always kind of a question from psychologists, but it's both, right? Nurture, of course, the environment does have an influence, right? I mean, if we never come to the temple and we're always hanging out, partying, hanging out with the bad influence, of course, we're going to be influenced, right? But we still have the nature, the good nature within us, that we can become a saint and sage and a Buddha, right? So, so obviously the environment is important, that we have to have a proper upbringing, education, all that, and we have to practice, cultivate in the right environment. So those are all important aspects, but realize that our nature is not fundamentally bad, right? It is fundamentally good because we have that Li Xing. Okay, so that true nature. All right, so these are, I think that's the last thing. Yeah, so these are kind of the topics that were kind of talked about in those two chapters. And if I had said anything wrong or not well enough, I ask the Buddhists for forgiveness and for your corrections.
One,